So just a couple things before introducing our panel. This decision around entrepreneurship or an entrepreneurial path is a very individual decision. And it could be a question of founding now, it could be a question of founding later, or it could be another approach altogether. And the factors include what is your prior experience, what is your visa situation, your family situation, financial picture, your risk tolerance. All of these things go into the decision you're making, even perhaps the broader economic timing as well. And we have a few stats for you that give you just a little bit of a picture. But again, everybody's story here is individual. And from the class of 23, which had 114 students, when they expressed at the beginning what their favorite path was, preferred path, 8 said they wanted to continue entrepreneurship. So they had done it before, they wanted to continue it. 5 of those were foreign nationals, 3 of those were US. 25 said, I want to found or join. Okay, so the actual, how many actually right after graduation, because of course it could be sometime later that they pick a different path, but within 6 months of graduation, 9 had founded, joined, or continued entrepreneurship. So that 5 of those came from the want to continue, and then we think 4 came from that 25. They could have come from something outside of this plan A. So that just gives you a sense that, sort of what people are interested in the beginning changes over the year, and people make adjustments. And one last thing to point out before the panelists is that we think about a risk gradient of entrepreneurial paths, and that there can be multiple ways to pursue entrepreneurship. So from highest risk, the founding now, then there's continuing an existing venture, joining a startup, founding later, intrapreneurship, and this is something I consider. I did it in my first role after Sloan, creating a new service line in a company. And even now, I take a very entrepreneurial approach to my work within MIT. And then hybrid, which is where you have a day job and then you're investing your time and money into entrepreneurial ventures. All right, so on to our panelists. And Henrietta has a busy, had some travel complications, so we're not sure exactly what time she'll join us. We'll work that into the flow. So next, Adela, if you would very briefly introduce yourself, because then we'll go into questions and you can say more about your journey. So Adela, just a few quick things about kind of pre-Sloan Fellow program, and then a few quick things about after.
Perfect. Thanks so much for having me here. Hope the mic volume is good. So on my end, I actually had about 15 years of work experience doing everything from startups to consulting to broadly tech and finance. I was with Sony Pictures in Los Angeles right before actually pivoting and going to MIT. And then after MIT, I actually formed my own venture capital fund with additional classmates who I met along the program. So I would say in a nutshell, my journey's been a little bit of everything, but going to MIT really helped me solidify what I wanted to do with that next chapter. And I also had a very big focus on diversity, which I was able to weave in to my next phase, which is running my own fund. Glad to be here.
Awesome, great. Erin, please.
Hey everyone, I'm Erin DeWicki. I'm Sloan Fellow from class of 2024, so just graduated. So I was a healthcare provider in orthopedic sports medicine for 15 years and decided I wanted to help build a better healthcare system. So did not expect to become an entrepreneur in any way, shape, or form, but I trusted the path and worked with the career coaches to kind of accept the journey that I am currently on. And I'm currently the co-founder and CEO of Lyme Alert. So we're a home tick testing kit for Lyme disease. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Erin. Fernando.
Hi, everybody. My name is Fernando Lanús. I was born and raised in Argentina, from Latin America. Prior Sloan, I did more than 15 years of experience in capital markets and corporate finance. I did all kinds of transactions. I came to Sloan with, I would say, 0% chances of wanting to become an entrepreneur. I always have like ideas, looking for opportunities, but I thought trying to build a new company in the US would be maybe it was not a possibility. So after working in capital markets for 15 years and being able to develop two broker-dealers, two capital markets broker-dealers business areas, I realized that I was like MIT gave me the resources and the environment and a safe space to start Expat AI, which is a solution to streamline the immigration process targeted for the Latin American community.
Great. All right. So I'll go next to Adela, and why this entrepreneurial path for you, and why MIT Sloan, or what was the particular role that MIT Sloan played in that?
Yeah, great question. So I would say this path was certainly something I had been thinking about for quite a while before I actually pursued it. And I think that's also really important just for everyone who's here in the audience as well, to really think deeply around what it is that you are doing and what you want to do and the big why that there is. And for me, as I shared very briefly in my intro, I had a lot of experience working in Silicon Valley, working with startups and consulting and tech finance, and then also with corporate. So I'd almost sort of tried out these different career paths and had experience and exposure working with small, medium, and large companies. And that background really gave me, I would say, a nice layup into thinking about what I wanted to do as I was pivoting and after I'd had, significant work experience. I'd also mention that because I am, half Indian, half white American, growing up between, two countries, and also having a lot of exposure to entrepreneurship, similar to the other guests here, coming from a family where entrepreneurship is sort of the norm. That was always something that I had in the back of my mind to pursue again later. And then coming to the second point that Melissa has asked here, being at Sloan, that allowed me really the opportunity to sort of press pause on, what we think we need to do. I think for a lot of us, sometimes we get into the mode of, sort of having these golden handcuffs and feeling we've set on a path, but hard to really make that change. But at Sloan, I was able to actually, put that aside and actually go out much more neutrally and just think about where my interests lied, who I could talk to, who I wouldn't normally get a chance to interact with on a daily basis if I had just stuck with corporate, which is what I was doing prior to the program. And that exploration, that sort of path and that opportunity to just wear the hat and ask all the questions and sort of indulge in different activities that I never had a chance to, that's really what helped me understand it has to be different. I have to come out of this program and do something much more entrepreneurial, much more leaning into diversity. And that's what, Malmark really does. We're a fund that's focused on early stage tech companies, applied AI companies, working with diverse teams out of here we are, innovation hubs. So really it was just like this beautiful sort of next step. But had I not made that pause for the Sloan Fellows MBA, none of this would have happened. And I truly, just could not imagine having skipped out on this like incredible year and a half.
So give us just a little bit of a couple examples of what made it incredible in terms of entrepreneurship.
Sure. So one thing that I would encourage anyone who's, interested in entrepreneurship to really lean into is the variety of classes and then also activities that you can do on the side. Right? As you're coming in, you obviously are doing a lot of research and you're looking into, where you want to spend your time. But there is like this incredible ecosystem that's really supporting entrepreneurs and budding entrepreneurs. So you can take courses, you can go to the Trust Center, you can actually participate in, at least be an audience member in demo days, some are in person, some are virtual, but really getting out there to mingle. Everything that Bill Allet's doing, of course, is incredible, but then also what the professors are doing. So Erin Scott, for example, is a professor there, and I did an independent study with her. And that's something that's a little bit different, a little bit creative, but Sloan allows you to be creative, right? So you not only get an opportunity to lean into all of these sort of more obvious channels and resources, but also the ones that are more organic. And then there's also the layer of clubs, which I think is fantastic. You know, student-led, you get an opportunity to meet with other peers. So the way I like to look at it is you want to have different stacks. You want to have sort of the stack that's going to be your professor and more, you know, the formal avenues. You want to have the informal, which is how do you mix and mingle with international students who are coming over, who have very similar, you know, ideas and attitudes to yourself, who want to explore. And then also the social, right? Thinking about, well, where else can you spend your social time, which is different from what you might have done if you were just sticking to, let's say, prior experience and prior sort of paths. And I think that blend, that mix of activities really gives you and provides for a really nice, well-rounded experience. At the end, you feel, okay, I really went out there and like dove deep into everything that was happening. That was also maybe a little bit, you know, in the gray area, but leaning into that gray.
Great. So I'm going to ask Aaron and Fernando for some of their examples of what was particularly rich here at MIT Sloan. Before I do that, just pointing all of our panelists to the Q&A function here in Zoom. There are some targeted questions already in there, and so that more than the chat could be a lively place to engage. Fernando, what are a couple things that were pivotal for you here at MIT Sloan? Especially, you mentioned this was 0% chance you were going to do this. What shifted for you? What was key at MIT for that?
Thank you for the question. I would say my path was, first of all, in the fall, I start choosing the entrepreneurial courses. So my strategy when I came to Sloan was not taking the courses that I didn't know anything. For example, would be, I come from a financial background, would be doing machine learning. I didn't want you to do that. So I look all the courses and I said, which are the courses I'm interested in? So I realized during the program that all the courses were related to the entrepreneurship path. And so the other good thing, I think, the great thing that MIT gives you is allowing yourself to think about your purpose, about the impact you want to do in your career. And the last thing I would say is, after doing 15 years of capital markets, I was terrified of leaving aside for a moment all that background, all that experience. But MIT gives you the support, the resources, the money, the professors, the lecturers, give you all the safe space to do whatever you want. Either is that ESG, either is finance, either is entrepreneurship. So when I finished the program, a few months before that, I applied to Delta V, which is the accelerator program at MIT. And finally, I got into a situation where I was paid to do what I wanted to do, that is try this venture. So this was amazing for me because I have as I said, the guidance, the professors, the money. I receive a grant for more or less $25,000 to pursue my venture. So without that, it would be impossible for me to go to that path.
Great. And just for context for everyone, so Fernando mentioned Delta V as an accelerator run out of the Trust Center for Entrepreneurship, which is immediately adjacent to Sloan on campus. So we have really good proximity there. And it's a by application selection process. So, you know, really kudos to Fernando getting into that and being able to leverage those resources. Aaron, what were, oh, I see James has his hand up. You have a quick thing here.
Quick, yes. So I know there's questions coming in the Q&A. For some reason, I'm not able to see them. So I'm working with Melissa to be able to get my access so I can get answers those. We're dropping, I've been sending Melissa B some information, so she's redirecting it back. So bear with us.
Awesome. Great. Yes. And Aaron, are you able to see the Q&A?
I am, and I just started replying to a couple of the questions in there.
Fantastic. Great. Well, if you would pick up on this same question of a couple key either resources or phases of the MIT ecosystem for you.
So I will say one of the things, as somebody who didn't come into MIT looking to do entrepreneurship, was that once I started tapping into that and realizing that maybe this is a way of making a difference in the healthcare system, the amount of resources are actually kind of overwhelming. So I was actually jealous of the people who knew they wanted to do that before they came to MIT, because they actually started tapping on those resources really early, like as soon as they got admission. It started reaching out to professors, reaching out to different departments, and making those connections so that when they did come into the Sloan Fellow program, they were able to hit the ground running. Now, for somebody like me who, really, again, had to be dragged kicking and screaming, I got pulled into a class called Sandbox Dive. So MIT Sandbox is a startup program, and they do this dive program in the summer before, when you're starting your core classes as a Sloan Fellow, that's really focused on healthcare specific problems. So it's not an easy one to jump in as a Sloan Fellow, because you kind of have to know you want to do it before you even get here. But it's run by a former Sloan Fellow, and she's super flexible. So she wants Sloan Fellows to be involved and learn about healthcare entrepreneurship as a way of making change. So if you're a healthcare person, if you're kind of even interested in sniffing around that space, I would highly suggest looking into that even now and seeing what the program is and what the various tracks are, because that may be something that you want to get involved in. So I came up with the idea for my startup during that class. So I pitched the idea, never thinking it was going to go anywhere. And an hour and a half later, I literally had people from across the ecosystem, like multidisciplinary people with chemistry and science and technology backgrounds, reaching out and saying, "That's a great idea. We have an idea that we can make this work." And I was like, "What? Like, this is crazy." An hour and a half after I pitched an idea, like, I have a team? This is insane. And we literally joined as a team then, and we've been, half of our team that joined last summer is still together. So it's just crazy how that works. That MIT is the kind of place where you can just say, "Wouldn't it be cool if?" And people will jump on board and be like, yeah, let's do it. Like, I totally have an idea of how we can do that. So I will say, like, it's a really accepting, open environment. Even if you think your idea is crazy, just have conversations with people and say it out loud, because you'll be shocked by the connections you'll make and the people who will be like, "Yes, I have an idea." So after I did Sandbox Dive, I did take Bill Aulette's Entrepreneurship 101, which is 15390. And I met my other co-founder, Brenda, who's another Sloan Fellow. She also didn't have an entrepreneurship background. She's from the Singapore police force. But what we found is the two of us had such complementary skills, and we just worked really well and efficiently together, that it's really hard to find good teams like that, and really good functional teams, especially with like just a group of really strong, amazing women. So then our third co-founder similarly has a PhD in chemistry. She's retired Air Force, and the three of us just worked together as Sloan Fellows throughout the year. Now, what we did, one person cannot tap every opportunity within the ecosystem. It is impossible. So once we realized we were working as a team, we actually evaluated what the possibilities were. Like, hey, there's this talk at night, there's Cambridge Innovation Center, there's a pitch to match. And we did a divide and conquer approach. So we evaluated what's available, who's available, and let's see how we can split this up as a team and tap as many resources as we can. So we did 100K competition. We did the Priscilla King Gray Social Innovation Challenge. We did healthcare competitions. So we covered the ecosystem pretty impressively throughout our year.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there I want to highlight in what you're saying. One is that there are so many different opportunities of the 100K competition, something I competed in as a student, and all of these others that give you a chance to hone what you're doing, to your message, your ideas, also to meet new people, potentially get connected to other resources as well. And so those you mentioned it's amazing how you can connect in this community. A big part of it is getting out there and doing those things that make you visible so that people can respond to what you're saying. So it's not just being here, it's actively participating in those. And then one other thing, you mentioned the Cambridge Innovation Center. That's not officially part of MIT. So could you say what it means to be in Kendall Square?
There's a huge startup scene outside of MIT. And they do a relatively good job of reaching out to students and make students aware of what's on offer. So the Cambridge Innovation Center hosts Venture Cafe every Thursday night, which is from 4 to 7, I believe. And
And
it's
how
free.
far is it from Sloan?
It is like 50 feet. Like literally one walk away. So they do have free beer and snacks. So if you need that as motivation, that is a reason to go as well. And there's a different theme every single Thursday. So they put out a newsletter. There's a theme. Sometimes it's robotics, sometimes it's healthcare, sometimes it's country specific or industry specific. So it's a really good, free, easy resource, and it's usually after classes are done on Thursday. So super great way of meeting people that you might not encounter otherwise.
Okay, great. So shifting a little bit for a few more minutes before James moderates some of the audience questions for us. Adela, thinking back to, when you were in the seat of our audience, so before coming here, at the time when you didn't know for sure, would you be coming, what do you wish you had known?
Yeah, gosh, that one is a tricky one, but I think looking back, I wish I would have known that there were more, I would say, organic opportunities, right? Because I think all of us really think about formal application, getting to a university. We have like these, preconceptions and different notions that, it's going to be a certain way. But really, I wish I would have known how important the organic interactions were. And what I mean by that very specifically, and Aaron sort of touched on this, that ecosystem is so rich. I mean, you have resources literally outside your doorstep and then at the next classroom and the next person. But really thinking about everyone who's coming to Sloan, I mean, they're coming not just for, Sloan Fellows, right? They're coming for the 2-year MBA. They're coming for the executive MBA. And so you've actually got many, many layers and channels of individuals that can really change your life, right? And so to Aaron's point, putting an idea out there and seeing what the response is, right? And really leaning into that. I wish I would have known how powerful that was, because that's probably something I would have done a little bit more of, even though I think I still did quite a bit as compared to, let's say, like the average student. But I really feel like I would have, done a little bit more in that regard. And I think the other element of it too is, just thinking about what makes you uncomfortable and leaning harder into that. I feel like I balanced my courses. So I took everything from, what I was really interested in, thinking about thought leadership, thinking about diversity, thinking about finance, thinking about tech, thinking about AI, which was also great timing because I was SF22. So before this like boom that we're seeing now, but really leaning into that harder, and just understanding, again, to Aaron's point, that this ecosystem and the resources are so rich and so helpful that people are there, so there is no failure, right? And so to get out of that comfort zone, what that will do for you and what that will open up for you and the people that will respond to you if you truly lean into that, I think, was incredible. But I do wish I could go back and, make some of those adjustments.
Yeah. Yeah. Fernando, thinking back to, let's see, it would be 2 years ago, right? That you would have been in this seat. What would you tell your past self to be thinking about?
So I would tell to myself, like, strongly, like, allow yourself to think in something new, something different, to go after whatever you like. Allow yourself to think in purpose, to think in what impact you want to do. Like those kind of questions, like give more space for that. And also I would say, leverage the network earlier, right? I took a few months at MIT to start reaching out to people, professors, alum. So ideally, if you know what you want to take from MIT out, start day one to reach out to people, like, spend more time making connections, and not too much time in classes and studying, which is good, but the network is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Something I also learned as a student was your time in classroom is not your most valuable network and relationship building time. And so sort of balancing accordingly. So Fernando, you talked about, and I think I'll go to Adele with the next question, but building what Fernando said about the expansion and the explore and sort of, you know, thinking big. But we also talk a lot about here fear of missing out, FOMO, and that FOMO can be very challenging because you try to do all the things and therefore can't go deep enough on one thing necessarily. And Adela, what really worked for managing FOMO, managing those feelings of like, oh my gosh, the world is so rich, I want to do everything, but the day is only so long. Adela, what helped you?
Yeah, that's going to be difficult. I mean, regardless of, how much we share here, I think it's just unavoidable. And that's because that ecosystem is phenomenal, so diverse, so exciting. And, there's always someone who's doing something that, you wish you'd heard about sooner. But if you want to be, and I heard this from a couple of classmates when I was in the program, if you want to be really intentional and just feel as though I really tried my best, think about planning, right? It sounds really simple, but the advice I would share is literally think about your week by week schedule and map it out. So to Fernando's point, how much time are you spending in class, right? And there's a requirement, of course. You're coming here, you're doing a really rigorous program. You have to put in the hours to attend class, to do the projects. Also, lots of group projects, right? You want to be a reliable team member. So you're going to have to plan around that. So call that your core work and your core hours. But then think about like this next layer, which is going to be maybe the exploration, right? So it's a time that you can have that you can weave in, like literally color code your calendar, like what is going to be the time that you have to do these social activities, but might be really rewarding. Maybe it's, talking about an idea like how Erin shared. She had this fantastic idea. She was, pursuing it, but you want to meet people who are also very generally excited and have different perspectives. And it's hard to get that in a course, right? It's hard to get that in a class where you're really just going per textbook and you're trying to crunch through lots of material and, 2 years of info in 1 year. So think about how you'll divide up your time. And then also think about, what it is that you can contribute, right? And that's something maybe even I wish I would have done a little bit more of. And I feel like I leaned into it, but think about, where you can sort of raise your hand and say, hey, I've got this interest or this background or this passion or this experience, and put that out there, because that'll also open up an avenue of newer experiences, right? So you won't have that FOMO of, gosh, I actually had these ideas and these sort of passions, but I never got to like really bring them to the forefront. Don't wait for that to be something that's, brought up. You should bring it up. And you're going to have WhatsApp chats going, you're going to have Slack channels going, you're going to have so many different avenues for communication. So utilize them, right? So in a nutshell, think about your week, think about your month, where you want to be, how you're dividing up your time. And then also think about like those communications so that you don't feel as though, you didn't hear about something and you really regret missing out on it. And then the other element is there will be lots of like bigger events that are happening. So they're going to be more like MIT events, not just Sloan, right? Which you're obviously able to access. Think about getting a couple of those under your belt, right? So again, you won't feel as though you just graduated with your head down, just working on what you needed to from a course perspective, but really getting to understand that ecosystem. Because guess what? Once you graduate, and we can speak from literal experience, you're not cut off. You have access. Your network is still there. It does live on. But think about, what do you want it to look like also after you graduate? And that'll help with the FOMO.
Awesome. Yeah. Great. James, which question are we going to first from the audience? We have so many good ones, but let's try to get to a few.
So I, for some reason, I'm still not able to see any of the questions. I've been trying to pop in resources in the chat as we've been going along. So
Okay.
if somebody is happy to raise it,
Yep.
call them those questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll pick one. So I'm going to sort of draw from what Jenny had posted in terms of the connection between Sloan and the rest of campus, which is kind of a sort of a way that we here at Sloan think about it. We're like, we're here at Sloan. There's so much happening here at Sloan. But then you sort of poke your head out the door and you're like, whoa, there's so much here on campus broadly. And in some cases, depending on what your entrepreneurial venture is, you really need to make some strong connections with people on the science and engineering side, or it could be on the some of the other aspects of MIT as well. Erin, can you speak to some of that connection between Sloan and the broader MIT campus?
Yeah, so you're right. It's like easy to get swept up in everything that is Sloan and never leave that. But I think it's super, super important to poke your head out the door and see what's going on across campus. And you can do that through a multitude of ways. So one of the ways I did early on was I actually did a hackathon. And the hackathon pairs you with random people across the ecosystem. So I'm from healthcare. I worked with my executive coach, which you guys might talk about or not. And his challenge to me was to do something that really scared me. So I had never worked in climate or AI. So I did the climate and AI hackathon, as a healthcare provider. I've no business in this. And I got teamed with a group of engineers all from Spain. So they're like visiting PhD students from Spain here for one semester. My Spanish isn't great. Their English wasn't amazing. But by the end of the weekend, we actually had a team and a product that a company was interested in seeing us like bring to commercialization. So magic happens when you get out of the Sloan ecosystem and go into one of these kind of scary things like a hackathon that's not in your area of expertise. So absolutely, absolutely recommend walking through Stata Building, looking at the posters, signing up for stuff that seems a little bit scary, and just meeting people. The other programs I would say are like MIT Sandbox is a very multidisciplinary program. Martin Trust does the Pitch to Match events, which brings students from all across the MIT ecosystem. So that's where you literally stand up with a microphone. You have 30 seconds to say what your crazy idea is, and then people might join you, or you might hear somebody else's crazy idea and say, I want to work with that person. And you form the connections that way. So there's great opportunities to connect with the ecosystem, but you do have to make the effort to pop out of Sloan and go look for it.
Yeah, I like how that you can find those ones that randomly pair you with people, because sometimes it can be hard to kind of break into the sort of existing departments or labs or groups. And so finding those where it gets mixed up is really smart. Yeah. So let's see. We talked a little bit about sort of why this entrepreneurial journey at Sloan and really at MIT Sloan. But Fernando, if you would say, what you think is really kind of the what was the MIT magic for you? There was a question comparing to a school on the West Coast that's also known for mid-career MBAs. What do you think was particularly good for you at MIT Sloan, and maybe what might be good for somebody else?
Okay, thanks for the question. I would say, and connecting with the previous comment, like for me, for example, taking the course AI for Impact outside Sloan with Professor Ramesh was great. I suddenly went out of the Sloan environment where people used to, use ties, more ties, a suit, and suddenly you go to this new building where, we meet students from Harvard, from other MIT schools, from engineering, from computer science. So you get all together in that class, start thinking in new projects, new ideas. Everything is allowed. Everything is it's to be done. Like AI now, it's exploding, and so having that environment to allow myself to. And I don't want to repeat myself, but putting aside my financial background to start being more creative, start being with new ideas, start thinking in real impact. For me, that was magical. Also with the new enterprises class, that you take that class outside Sloan with other students, some of them maybe undergrads, other schools, and so on. So it's very hard to quantify, but it has a lot of value for me.
Awesome. Awesome. So then, just taking a look here. Adela, you're a couple of years farther out than our other two panelists. And what are you seeing as kind of the longer term benefit for you?
Yeah, I think I touched on this in my last response, and I truly mean it, because I applied during COVID. I mean, it was an interesting time when I applied for this program. I came in when things were getting back to, let's say normal, and then I graduated in 2022. And so I've had, 2 full years of being out of Sloan now. And at the same time, it doesn't feel like it's been 24 months, right? And I think that's because of everything that I was able to build and the activities that I did and the network and the relationships that I built. And then also because I am working on something that still kind of connects back, right? And this will be different for maybe somebody who perhaps started a venture fund unrelated to sort of supporting these, these innovation hubs, as we call it, in these ecosystems. And so I get to come back to Boston and to Cambridge and to MIT quite a bit, which keeps me also, I think, further grounded and connected to that ecosystem. But again, it's also like how you think about it, right? And so I would say, and sort of to this panel here with James and Melissa and the whole team, I mean, they're going to be really active to bring you back and keep you connected. You're going to have your network and your sort of relationships, your friends who you met in classes or even outside, who are going to bring you back. And then if you're building something that sort of feeds back into it, there are so many avenues. And I think that's something I just had no idea about earlier. But now when I look back, I go, wow, this is incredible. It's 2024, but I'm still maybe even more plugged in. I mean, even if I don't know if that's possible, but I feel I'm actually more plugged in to MIT and to Sloan than I was when I was there. And I don't know that that would be the same response, at any other university, right? And so I think that look back is something that I do try to do. I try to think about what else I can be doing, what else is sort of missing. But I think that also comes from just having that genuine sort of curiosity, right? While you're at MIT, to sort of like think broader and sort of like drop a little, connections all over the map, but then also leaning into clubs and whatnot, as I shared earlier, that has kept me very connected, which I really appreciate. But I also think back, to the variety of the courses. So just as a quick side note, had I not sort of expanded and thought about, let's take the courses that, yes, everybody wants, that's really popular, but let's take the ones that are also just interesting, right? And maybe were my second and third choice. Those second and third choice classes have helped me create great relationships, great bonds. I also took some classes down the road at Harvard, which have been incredible. So I have this really nice sort of network that sort of feeds back. So yeah, I mean, I could go on about it, but I think that has really helped me now continue to thrive and continue to be able to like lean on what I've learned. And also it's kind of funny to say it, but you might look back at your materials, you might look back at what you learned, which you maybe didn't have enough time to dive into it because, 1 year is really hard to absorb everything. And so I still lean on, articles and case studies and different things that I, certainly understood and got a good understanding of there, but maybe didn't have a chance to appreciate, right? And that's still sort of very nicely ringing out 24 months later.
Fantastic. Yeah. As an alum, even before I was working at MIT, I really found the ongoing connections amazing. So let's see, 2 more things before we wrap up. One is a few of the questions could be answered by looking at one of my favorite resources. I think it's often overlooked, and that is the Trust Center's annual report. It sounds kind of boring, but it is jam-packed full of resources. Yes, you can find them on websites, but it just feels more coherent looking in this annual report. James will post a link for that in a moment, and that can answer questions about, for instance, Delta V that Fernando talked about and was his his funding source because he was part of the accelerator, and some of what ventures have gone on to do. Fernando, just a quick word, I know we're right at time, but anything you can say in summary about what you experienced or saw other people experiencing as international students pursuing entrepreneurship?
Yeah, being an international student and having all the resources that MIT provides, it's amazing, because prior to, as I said before, prior to MIT, for me, the chances to start something in the US was almost impossible. So MIT and you know, connecting with the accelerator program gave me the lectures, gave me they assigned me a board for my company, a specific board that was for 3 months after us giving advice, people that raised money, people that did ventures in the past, have a lot of experience. The money, the $25,000 in grant to start the business, all kinds of things as an international student gives you the resources and the courage to say, if you want to do this, like, okay, let's try it. Why not? I mean, you're in a safe environment. You can raise your hand and ask questions, get advice, and in a very genuine support you receive, because people are willing to help you without expecting anything from you. So it's a very safe environment.